During our Thanksgiving dinner, I announced I had cleared my cousin's student loans as a surprise. He looked up, scoffed, and asked, "If you're so generous, why not take care of my car note too?" I just smiled, picked up the check I'd just filled out, ripped it in two, and said, "This is your credit rating. It's just about the only thing poorer than your manners." Can you imagine pouring your heart and soul and every spare penny you have into keeping your family afloat for years, only to discover they see you as nothing more than a walking ATM? Because that's exactly what happened to me. "What?" my own cousin said to me last Thanksgiving. That one snarky comment didn't just hurt, it shattered my entire world and ignited a fire inside me I didn't know I had. My name's Patrick, I'm 31, and for years, every Thanksgiving at my mom's house felt less like a holiday dinner and more like a twisted reality show. You know, the kind where you just know someone's about to throw a drink or storm out. And usually, I was the quiet one, the one in the background, secretly holding everything together financially. Nobody ever seemed to notice. Or worse, they acted like I was just doing the bare minimum. But this year, I really thought it would be different. I'd been planning a massive surprise for months. I'd saved every extra dollar to pay off my cousin Ryan's student loans completely. Ryan and I, we were practically inseparable growing up, more like brothers than cousins. I knew those loans were a huge weight on him. He even joked last Christmas that he'd be paying them off until he was 50. So when I got a bonus at work, I decided to do something big, something that might actually make Thanksgiving feel like a real celebration for once. Walking into my mom's house that evening, I was buzzing. Nervous, yeah, but mostly just excited. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon rolls hit me, and for a fleeting moment, I actually thought, this is it. This is how normal families feel. My mom gave me her usual distracted peck on the cheek, already halfway back to the gravy. My dad just nodded from his recliner. Everyone was there. My sister Lauren, with her impossibly perfect hair and equally perfect husband. My aunt and uncle, already loudly rehashing their latest vacation, and Ryan, chilling on the couch with a beer, looking tired but managing a polite smile as Lauren bragged about her new kitchen renovation. I took a deep breath, found a seat, and decided to wait until dinner. The reveal deserved an audience. Dinner, of course, was its usual circus. Everyone talking over each other, dishes flying around, my stepdad grumbling about the dry stuffing. I waited. Waited until everyone had eaten enough to at least quiet down a bit. Then, when there was a lull, I cleared my throat. "Hey," I said, my voice cutting through the remaining chatter. "I've got something to share. It's kind of big." Every single head at the table turned to look at me. That alone was a miracle. I swear I could have announced the house was on fire, and half of them wouldn't have looked up from their plates. I smiled, trying to keep my voice steady. "Ryan," I began, looking at him directly. "I know those student loans have been a nightmare, so as of this morning, they're gone. Paid off. You're free." For half a second, there was absolute silence. My mom gasped. My uncle's fork clattered loudly against his plate. Lauren, ever the queen of backhanded compliments, just said, "Wow, seriously," in that tone she uses when she's impressed against her will. Ryan just blinked at me, processing it all, and for a split second I swear I saw pure relief flood his face. My heart swelled. This was the moment. Then he laughed. Not a grateful laugh, not even an awkward, I don't know how to react laugh. No. It was a sharp, almost mocking sound. "Cool," he said, setting his beer down with a smirk playing on his lips. "Guess you can pay off my car loan too if you really care." The whole table went dead quiet again. My mom tried that high-pitched, brittle laugh to ease the tension, but it just hung in the air. Pathetic. My aunt muttered something about Ryan just joking, but he wasn't. I could see it in his eyes, in the way he leaned back, that smug look. This was a game to him. Something twisted in my chest. For months I'd planned this. Imagined how good it would feel to truly help him, to see him genuinely happy. Instead, he'd turned it into a punchline. And in that moment, something inside me just snapped. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the printed check I'd brought to show them, the physical proof of what I'd done, and before I could even think, I tore it clean in half. The rip was deafening in the silence. "Enjoy your credit score," I said, my voice shockingly calm despite the volcano erupting inside me. It's the only thing lower than your manners. I stood up, walked to the kitchen trash can, and dropped the pieces in. No one said a word. Ryan's smirk finally faltered. My mom looked like she'd just witnessed a car crash. Lauren's mouth hung half open, as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find a single word. I grabbed my coat and left before anyone could follow. On the drive home, my phone started buzzing, a relentless assault of messages. First, Mom. Patrick, please don't make a scene over a joke. Then Lauren. You overreacted. He was just teasing. Finally, Ryan himself. You didn't have to be so dramatic. I would have thanked you eventually. I tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. The anger wasn't a quick burn. It was a slow, heavy resentment, settling deep in my bones. As I parked outside my apartment, a single chilling thought began to take shape. I have been carrying this family for years, quietly paying for things no one else wanted to deal with. Mom's mortgage shortfall, Dad's prescription refills, the electric bill that always seemed to get lost. And tonight, it became painfully clear how little they actually appreciated it. That's when I started wondering, what would happen if I stopped carrying them at all? And that, my friends, is where things really began to spiral. The next morning, my phone was a graveyard of missed calls and texts from Mom, ranging from furious accusations, "You embarrassed Ryan," to strained attempts at reconciliation. "You should come by so we can talk this out." I didn't reply. I just sat in my kitchen staring at the screen as my coffee went cold. The truth? I wasn't embarrassed. If anything, I was furious at myself for not speaking up sooner. For years, I'd been the family's silent safety net. No one ever directly asked me for money. It was always implied, subtle. Your stepdad's hours got cut this month. The mortgage is going to be tight. Or, Lauren's car broke down and they just can't swing the repairs right now. Poor things. And I'd step in, wire the money, and life would go on. No thank yous, no recognition, just an unspoken expectation that I'd keep doing it. But after last night, I saw it for what it truly was. Not just expectation, but outright entitlement. That weekend, I decided to test them. Mom had mentioned in one of her texts that the electric bill was due and the online portal was being weird again. Normally, I'd log in, pay it, and text her it was handled. This time, I did nothing. 3 days later, I got a group text from Mom. Power went out today. Thanks a lot, Patrick. You knew the bill was due. I stared at the message, stunned. Not a single word about whether I was okay or if something had happened to me. Just straight to blaming me. I typed out 3 different replies, the first sarcastic, the second apologetic, the third downright furious, before finally putting my phone down and walking away. That night, I cooked myself dinner, poured a glass of wine, and decided I wasn't going to explain myself anymore. If they noticed I'd stopped being their personal bank? Good. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. 2 weeks later, Lauren called me. Called. She never calls unless she wants something big. Hey, she said in that sickeningly sweet, careful voice she uses when she's buttering someone up. So, Josh and I have been looking at expanding the kitchen, and the contractor wants a bigger deposit than we expected. You wouldn't happen to be able to float us a loan, would you? There it was. The ask. I took a breath. Sorry, Lauren, things are tight on my end right now. Can't help this time. The silence on the other end stretched for a full 5 seconds. Then she said, Wow, okay. I just thought after everything you've done for Ryan, you'd want to help family. Something about that hit me harder than I expected. After everything I've done for Ryan, she made it sound like I'd chosen him over everyone else, when in reality, I'd been covering for all of them for years. I have helped family, I said finally, keeping my tone even. A lot more than you know. Yeah, well, she said, her voice going cold now. Maybe you should think about who actually deserves it. And she hung up. The next time I saw them was at Sunday dinner a few days later. I wasn't planning on going, but Mom called and left a voicemail that said, We need to clear the air. Just come. So, I went. When I walked in, I could feel the tension immediately. Everyone was sitting around the table. Ryan with his usual smirk, Lauren looking smug, Mom looking utterly exhausted. Dad didn't even look up from his plate when I sat down. Patrick, Mom started, her voice strained. I think we all need to talk about what happened at Thanksgiving. There's nothing to talk about, I said, cutting her off. I did something nice for Ryan. He turned it into a joke. I decided not to let myself be treated like that. Ryan rolled his eyes. Dude, it was a joke. You're really going to hold a grudge over one comment? One comment? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Ryan, that was the most disrespectful thing you could have said. Do you even understand what it took for me to do that? The hours I worked, the sacrifices I made? He shrugged. Nobody asked you to do it. You just like playing hero. That stung more than I wanted to admit. Then Lauren chimed in. He's right, Patrick. You can't just throw money at people and then get mad when they don't react the way you want. I turned to her. I'm not mad that he didn't react how I wanted. I'm mad that he mocked me. There's a difference. Mom held up her hands. Okay, enough. The point is, this family has always supported each other. Supported each other? I cut her off again before I could stop myself. When exactly has this family supported me? That silenced the room. I looked around at them, my chest tight. When I was working 2 jobs and barely sleeping, who helped me? When my car broke down and I had to take the bus for 6 months, who offered me a ride? When I missed Christmas one year because I couldn't afford the flight home, who even called me? No one. But the minute someone else needs money, I'm expected to be there. For a moment, no one said anything. Then Dad put down his fork and finally spoke. You're the one who chose to be the responsible one. Nobody forced you. That broke something in me. I stood up. You know what? You're right. Nobody forced me, and now I'm choosing to stop. I grabbed my coat and left, slamming the door behind me. Over the next month, things only got worse. Mom called constantly, sometimes crying, sometimes angry, saying things like, "This family is falling apart, and you're making it worse." Lauren sent passive-aggressive texts about how it must be nice to just worry about yourself. Ryan posted on social media about how some people think money makes them better than everyone else, which I knew was aimed at me. And then came the final gut-wrenching straw. I got a notice in the mail for a credit card bill I'd never seen before. It was in my name, but the charges were clearly not mine. Hundreds of dollars at stores I don't even shop at. When I called the credit card company, they dropped a bomb. My mom had been an authorized user for years. She'd maxed out the card. That night, I sat on my couch with the letter in my hand and felt something inside me go utterly cold. They hadn't just taken me for granted. They had been using me, and that was when I knew I wasn't just going to walk away quietly this time. I was going to make sure they never forgot the day I stopped being their safety net. I didn't sleep much that night. I just sat there staring at the credit card statement like it was a letter from a different, terrifying world. For years, I had been so meticulous with my credit. Paid everything on time, kept my balances low, maintained a high score. And now here it was. A maxed-out card in my name, a ticking time bomb waiting to wreck everything I'd painstakingly built. The next morning, I drove straight to my parents' house without calling first. I was past polite conversations. I needed answers. Mom was in the kitchen making coffee when I walked in, and the look on her face when she saw me was a sickening mix of surprise and guilt. "Patrick," she said cautiously, "we weren't expecting you." I held up the letter. "Do you want to explain this?" Her face fell. "Oh, you got that, huh? You think?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Why is there a card in my name that you've been using?" She set the coffee pot down with a sigh. "Patrick, it's not what you think. That card was just for emergencies. We always paid it off eventually." "Eventually?" I retorted, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "Mom, it's maxed out and you didn't pay it this month. My credit is going to tank because of this." By now, my stepdad had walked into the kitchen, pulling on a sweatshirt. "Oh, come on," he said dismissively. "You make good money. One little credit card bill isn't going to ruin your life." I spun on him. "It's not about one bill. It's about the fact that nobody even asked me before putting my name on it." "We didn't think you'd mind," Mom said quickly, her voice a plea. "You've always been so generous, Patrick. You've helped so much already." I stared at her, stunned. "You didn't think I'd mind? It's my credit, my future. What if I wanted to buy a house? What if I needed that line of credit for something important?" Mom's voice went tight. "We just thought you'd understand. Your stepdad's hours got cut and Lauren needed help with the kids' tuition." "Wait," I said, cutting her off, my mind reeling. Lauren's tuition? Mom hesitated, then nodded. She and Josh are sending the kids to that private school, you know. It's expensive. I took a step back, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. So, you're telling me I've been paying for my sister's kids' private school without even knowing it? Only a little, Mom said quickly, trying to backtrack. We were going to pay you back when things stabilized. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Oh, sure. Like you paid me back for the car repairs? Or the mortgage shortfall? Or the time I covered Dad's hospital bill and you conveniently forgot to reimburse me? My stepdad crossed his arms, defiant. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. Family shares. That's what we do. No, I said, my voice shaking now, not with fear, but with pure, unadulterated anger. Families talk. Families respect each other enough to ask before using their credit. This isn't sharing. This is stealing. Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. Patrick, don't say that. Why not? I said, the words spilling out. Because that's what it is. I turned and walked out before I could say anything worse. When I got home, I immediately called the credit card company again and demanded they close the account. They warned me it might hurt my credit temporarily, but I honestly didn't care. I just wanted the account gone. That night, I got a call from Lauren. You closed the card? She demanded, her voice sharp with disbelief. Yeah, I said flatly. You can't just do that, she snapped. The kids' tuition was on autopay. I felt my stomach churn. Lauren, do you even hear yourself? That was my card. You never asked me. You just let Mom put you on it like I'm some kind of ATM. You've always been the one with money, she retorted. You don't have kids. You don't have a mortgage. What's the big deal? The big deal, I said slowly, emphasizing each word, is that you all decided I don't get a say in how my money is used. And that ends today. There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then she said, her voice dripping with venom, You're being selfish. I hung up. The next week was a blur of fallout. Mom called me crying, claiming Lauren was furious and the kids might have to switch schools mid-year. Ryan texted me a long paragraph about how I was tearing the family apart over a few thousand. My stepdad left a voicemail telling me I should be ashamed for letting my niece and nephew suffer because of my pride. But the thing that truly broke me came the following Friday. I'd been thinking about finally taking a short vacation, something just for me to clear my head. I'd found a cheap flight to Spain and was ready to book it. When I went to pay, my card was declined. Confused, I checked my online banking and froze. My checking account was nearly empty. I scrolled through the transactions and felt sick. Several large transfers had gone through in the last month to my parents' account. Transfers I hadn't authorized. It took me an hour on the phone with the bank to figure out what had happened. Years ago, when my dad had some health problems, I'd added him as a joint user on one of my accounts so he could pay bills in case I was unavailable. I'd completely forgotten about it. And now, apparently, they'd been dipping into that account whenever they were short, without ever telling me. I sat there on my couch, staring at the empty account balance, and felt something inside me go numb. This wasn't just about a credit card anymore. This wasn't just about helping family. This was about them having access to my life in a way I never fully realized. And they had taken egregious advantage of it. That night, I didn't answer the phone, or the next morning, or the morning after that. I just sat with it, letting the betrayal sink in, letting the anger harden into something sharper, something cold and precise. Because this wasn't just about money. This was about trust. And trust, once it's broken this badly, doesn't just come back. I started thinking about everything I'd ever done for them. Every late-night bill payment, every quiet transfer, every sacrifice I'd made to make sure they were comfortable. And I realized none of it had ever truly mattered to them. And that was the moment I stopped just being angry and started planning. Not to hurt them, at least not at first, but to take back every single piece of my life they'd claimed as theirs. Because if they wanted to see what it looked like when I stopped being the family safety net, I was going to show them. And I was going to make damn sure they never forgot it. After discovering my joint account was practically drained, I spent the entire weekend at rock bottom. I didn't leave my apartment, didn't turn on the TV, didn't answer texts, didn't even bother cooking much. I just sat there, running my hands through my hair, staring at the wall, wishing I could just will myself to feel normal again. The worst part wasn't even the missing money, though that stung like crazy. The worst part was knowing they had access to it all along and didn't once think to tell me. This wasn't some emergency withdrawal, Some one-time crisis where everyone's backs were against the wall. No. It was weeks, maybe months, of casually dipping into my account every time they felt like they needed something. On Monday morning, I went to the bank in person. I sat across from the manager, a soft-spoken woman in glasses, and asked to remove my stepdad from every single account. Her eyebrows shot up when she pulled up my profile. "Mr. O'Neill," she said carefully, "there have been several large withdrawals in the last 60 days. Would you like to dispute them?" I hesitated. Disputing them meant starting a fraud claim, which meant my parents could face serious legal trouble. As furious as I was, a part of me still flinched at the idea of hurting them that way. "Not yet," I said finally. "Just shut down the access. Issue me a new card, new login, new everything." She nodded and got to work. Within half an hour, I walked out with a folder of paperwork and a brand new account no one but me could touch. It should have felt like a relief. Instead, I just felt like I was betraying my family just by protecting myself. That night, my phone lit up again. 22 missed calls from Mom, 3 voicemails from Lauren, 1 long, rambling text from my stepdad that ended with, "You think you're better than the rest of us, but this family made you who you are." I tossed the phone face down on the table. I knew what was coming next, the guilt campaign. And sure enough, it started within days. Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced one evening, tears streaming down her face, holding a bag of leftovers. "Patrick, we need to talk," she pleaded the moment I opened the door. "I'm not doing this right now," I said, keeping my voice calm, unwavering. "Please," she said, stepping inside anyway. "You can't just cut us off. We're your family." "We were counting on that money." "That's exactly the problem," I said, my voice rising slightly. "You were counting on it without telling me, without asking me? Do you even know what that feels like?" Her chin trembled. "We thought you understood. You've always been the responsible one." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah, responsible. That's the word you use when you need me to clean up your messes." She flinched but didn't deny it. I handed her back the bag of leftovers. "I'm not your safety net anymore, Mom. I'm done." She left without another word. After that, the rest of the family fell into 2 camps. One camp went silent. No calls, no texts, just radio silence, like I'd been cut out of the family group chat entirely. The other camp doubled down. Constant messages about how selfish I was being, how I was tearing the family apart, how the kids were going to suffer because of me. I won't lie. It got to me. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I'd gone too far, if I should have just swallowed my pride and let it go like I always did. There were moments at work where I'd zone out completely, running numbers in my head, thinking about how long it would take to rebuild what they'd taken from me. But slowly something shifted. Maybe it was the quiet of my apartment. Maybe it was the fact that for the first time in years I was paying bills that were only mine, seeing bank balances that weren't secretly being siphoned off. Whatever it was, I started to think more clearly. One evening, I sat down at my desk, opened a notebook, and started writing. Not a journal, a plan. I made a list of every payment I'd ever covered, every mortgage gap, every car repair, every loan that was never paid back. It took hours going through old statements and texts. But by the time I was done, I had a number at the bottom of the page that made my stomach churn. Tens of thousands of dollars. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I wrote another list. What I wanted. Not money, not exactly. I wanted my autonomy back. I wanted them to stop seeing me as a bank account. I wanted them to feel, even for a moment, what it was like to carry the weight I'd been carrying. I closed the notebook and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Calm. Because now, for the first time, I wasn't just reacting. I wasn't just angry. I was in control. The next few weeks were strange. I kept my distance. I didn't show up for Sunday dinners. I didn't answer texts right away. I stopped volunteering information about my job, my finances, my life. And the more I pulled back, the more frantic they got. Lauren posted some passive-aggressive nonsense on Facebook about people who abandon family when times get tough. Ryan sent me a meme about rich uncles who don't share, which I ignored. My stepdad even showed up at my job once, uninvited, and asked my boss to tell Patrick to call his mother. I told him, right there in front of everyone, to leave. It was humiliating but also clarifying. They didn't respect boundaries because I had never enforced them. And now I was. The real turning point came when I ran into Ryan at the grocery store one Friday evening. He spotted me near the produce section, grinned like nothing had happened, and said, "Hey man, you coming by Sunday?" "We're thinking of doing ribs." I just looked at him. "Are you serious?" He frowned. "What?" "It's just dinner." "Ryan," I said, my voice low and steady, "you and the rest of them have been using me for years. You mocked me when I tried to do something good for you, and now you want to pretend nothing happened?" He shrugged. "Look, we all say dumb stuff sometimes. You're the one taking it too far." I stepped closer. "No, Ryan, I'm the one finally drawing a line. Big difference." He didn't have a comeback for that. That night, I went home, opened my notebook again, and started sketching out the next step. Because pulling away wasn't enough anymore. They needed to understand what they'd done. Really understand it. And if that meant letting them hit rock bottom for once in their lives, so be it. Something shifted in me after that night in the grocery store. It was like a switch flipped. For the first time in months, maybe years, I stopped feeling like a victim of my own family. Instead, I started to feel like the one holding all the cards, or at least someone who could choose which ones to play. The first thing I did was take a hard look at my finances, not just to clean up the mess they'd made, but to truly rebuild. I spent nights combing through old bank statements, credit reports, and tax returns, getting a full picture of where I stood. It was worse than I'd hoped, but better than I feared. My credit score had taken a hit from the maxed-out card, but it wasn't beyond repair. My savings had been drained, but I still had my job, my paycheck, my ability to recover. I opened a separate high-yield savings account and started funneling a percentage of every paycheck into it, untouchable except by me. It felt good watching that balance slowly tick upward, like I was quietly reclaiming territory they'd invaded. At work, I threw myself into projects. Maybe it was spite, maybe it was survival, but I started taking on extra assignments, showing up early, staying late. My boss noticed. One afternoon, she called me into her office and said, "Patrick, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but whatever it is, keep it up. The regional director is coming next month, and I want you to present the results of the last quarter." I blinked. "Me, really?" She smiled. "You earned it." That night, I went home and actually celebrated, ordered takeout, poured myself a drink, and toasted to the quiet little comeback no one else even knew I was making. Meanwhile, the family kept trying to pull me back in. Mom called less, but when she did, it was with carefully measured guilt. "We haven't seen you in so long, Patrick. Your sister's kids miss you?" Lauren sent photos of the kids at school looking adorable, clearly meant to tug at my heartstrings. Ryan sent memes that were half apology, half dig, as though we could laugh it all off and pretend nothing had happened. But I didn't bite. I didn't yell. I didn't block them. I just didn't respond right away. Sometimes I didn't respond at all. And slowly it seemed to sink in that I wasn't coming running like I used to. By the time the regional director visited my company, I was ready. I stood in front of the conference room, clicked through my slides, and felt a surge of confidence I hadn't felt in months. When it was over, the director shook my hand and said, "Impressive work. We'll be talking about you." A week later, I got the email. A promotion. A real one this time, not just a new title with the same paycheck. It came with a raise big enough to make me sit back in my chair and grin. For a moment, I thought about calling Mom to tell her the good news. But then I stopped myself. This was mine. Instead, I transferred half the raise straight into my savings account and used the other half to book that trip to Spain I'd been planning months ago. This time with my new card that only I could touch. That trip was the first time in years I felt truly free. I walked the streets of Barcelona alone, tried food I couldn't pronounce, stayed up late listening to live music in small, smoky bars. No one was calling me. No one was asking me to cover a bill. No one was texting me with urgent family drama. It was just me, my thoughts, and the profound realization that I didn't actually need them as much as I believed. When I came back, I felt sharper, calmer, and strangely more patient. I wasn't boiling with anger anymore. I was planning. I started putting together a detailed spreadsheet of every dollar I'd spent on the family over the past few years. I gathered texts, emails, screenshots, not because I planned to sue them, but because I wanted a record. I wanted to be able to put it in front of them one day and say, "This is what you took from me. This is why I stopped." I also quietly rerouted every shared bill still in my name. The phone plan moved into Mom's name. The streaming accounts canceled. The emergency credit card they'd used for surprises was closed and replaced with one tied only to me. Each step felt like cutting a tether. And as my life got cleaner, theirs got messier. Mom called one evening sounding utterly frazzled, saying the power company had sent a shut-off notice. I told her politely that she needed to call them directly, since the account was now in her name. She sputtered. "But you always—" "I don't anymore," I said gently and hung up. Lauren texted me a week later asking if I could just spot them for a few months, while Josh looked for a new job. I replied with a single line, "I can't." Ryan didn't say anything for a while, but I saw on social media that he'd started driving for a rideshare service at night, probably to make up for the fact that I wasn't there to quietly bail him out anymore. Piece by piece, the family was starting to feel what I had felt all those years, and for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. Because this wasn't about punishing them, not yet. This was about teaching them what life without me looked like. And judging by the increasingly desperate voicemails, they were finally starting to understand. By the time spring rolled around, my life felt almost unrecognizable compared to where I'd been just a few months earlier. My savings account was healthy again. My credit score was crawling back up, and I was sleeping through the night without waking up in a cold sweat. But as good as it felt to be in control of my own life, I couldn't shake the thought that the family still didn't entirely get it. Sure, they were feeling the consequences. Mom had finally taken on a part-time job to help with the bills. Lauren and Josh had downsized their renovation plans, and Ryan had cut back on his spending if his social media posts about boring weekends were anything to go by. But when I saw them at a cousin's birthday party, it was clear they were still whispering about me behind my back. Lauren avoided me entirely. Mom tried to make small talk, but her eyes darted nervously toward the kitchen every time I spoke. Ryan smirked when I walked in, like he still thought this was some kind of game. I smiled politely, made conversation with my cousin, and left early. On the drive home, I realized something profoundly important. They still saw me as the same Patrick they could guilt into anything. To them, my distance was just a tantrum, something that would blow over eventually. And that's when I decided I wasn't just going to distance myself. I was going to make a statement. The first piece of leverage practically fell into my lap. One morning at work, my boss asked me to sit in on a meeting with the corporate legal team. It turned out they were looking for someone to coordinate a new partnership program, essentially a mentorship pipeline for smaller local businesses to get guidance from our company's resources. When I saw the list of applicants, I nearly choked on my coffee. My stepdad's name was on it. Apparently, he'd applied for the program on behalf of a small construction business he'd recently partnered with. The program offered funding, free training, and access to resources that could make or break a struggling business. And as part of the coordination team, I'd have a front row seat to the selection process. I didn't say anything in the meeting, of course. But when I got home, I dug into the application he'd submitted. It was messy. Half the financials were estimates, not actual numbers. There were glaring inconsistencies about cash flow, and he'd conveniently left out the fact that he'd recently defaulted on a supplier payment. Normally, this wouldn't have been my problem. But now it was an opportunity. I didn't sabotage him. Not directly. I wasn't about to risk my own job over family drama. But I did exactly what I was supposed to do. Flag the inconsistencies, asked for clarification, and send a follow-up email requesting documentation before the application could be moved forward. A week later, I got a text from Mom. "Your stepdad says the company rejected his application because of you. Is that true?" I stared at the phone, debating how to answer. Finally, I typed back, "No, they asked for more documentation. If he can't provide it, that's on him." She didn't reply. That was when I realized just how much leverage I really had. I wasn't just some guy quietly funding their lives in the background anymore. I was someone with connections, someone who had access to information and influence they didn't. I started thinking about other ways I could use that. I remembered the spreadsheet I'd made of every dollar I'd ever given them, and I began turning it into something more formal. A detailed, itemized ledger with dates, amounts, and reasons for each payment. I formatted it cleanly, like a professional invoice, and added a total at the bottom that made even me blink. Then I wrote a short cover letter. This is a record of every payment I have made to support this family over the last 8 years. Consider it my final contribution. As of today, I am no longer financially involved in any way. Future requests will not be honored. This is not up for discussion. I didn't send it yet. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to time it perfectly. Meanwhile, life kept giving me little gifts. One afternoon, I got an unexpected call from my uncle, the same one who'd accidentally revealed at that Sunday lunch months ago that he'd been sending me money for a college fund I never saw. "Patrick," he said, his voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "I've been thinking about what you said back then about never getting the money." I checked with the bank. Turns out the account was drained years ago. Your mother was the co-signer. I felt my jaw tighten. So she knew. She had to. "Look," he continued, "I can't tell you what to do, but you might want to ask her about it directly. That was supposed to be yours." After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. All this time, I thought the joint account withdrawals and the credit card mess were just about short-term survival. Desperate decisions made in a pinch. But this was different. This was a long-term, premeditated decision to take something meant for me and reroute it elsewhere. It was bigger than I'd realized, and if I needed a final push to go through with my plan, that was it. I started moving deliberately now. I updated my will just in case. I moved more money into separate accounts, locked down my credit, and even set up alerts for any attempts to open accounts in my name. I wasn't going to be blindsided again. And then, when everything was in place, I printed out the ledger, tucked it into a neat folder, and left it on my desk where I could see it every day. Not as a threat, as a promise. Because the next time they tried to guilt me, the next time they tried to pull me back in, I was going to hand them that folder and watch their faces as they saw in black and white just how much they had taken for granted. And maybe, just maybe, I was going to do it somewhere public, somewhere they couldn't talk their way out of it. I waited for the right moment, not out of fear, but because timing mattered now. I wanted them to feel the weight of it, to have nowhere to hide from the truth. And when Mom sent a text saying, "Please come to dinner this Sunday. We need to talk about the family finances," I knew I'd found it. Perfect. That Sunday, I arrived right on time, folder in hand, dressed better than I usually do. Not flashy, but sharp enough to make a point. This was business, not another family guilt session. The house smelled like roast chicken and garlic bread, but the usual warmth of family dinner was gone. Everyone was already seated when I walked in. Mom wringing her hands, Lauren scrolling on her phone, Josh sitting stiffly, Ryan leaning back like he was already bored, and my stepdad glaring at me with that look that used to make me feel 12 years old again. I didn't sit right away. Instead, I placed that folder, heavy with years of their choices, right in the center of the table. I slid it toward my mom. "Before anyone says a word," I said, my voice calm, steady, and dangerously quiet, "you're going to read that." Mom hesitated, but something in my tone must have told her I wasn't kidding. She opened the folder, scanned the first page, and went utterly pale. What is this?" she whispered. "That," I said, taking the seat at the head of the table, "is every dollar I've paid to support this family since I was 23. Mortgage gaps, medical bills, vacations you couldn't afford but took anyway. Repairs, random emergencies." Lauren leaned forward, frowning. "You kept track of all that?" "Yes," I said simply. "And now you can see what it adds up to." Ryan made a scoffing sound. "So what, you want us to pay you back?" "Good luck with that." I turned my gaze on him, steady. "No, Ryan, I don't want you to pay me back. You can't, none of you can. This isn't about money anymore. This is about making sure you understand why I'm done." Mom flipped through the pages, her breathing quickening as she got to the bottom line. "Patrick, this can't be right." "It's right," I said quietly. "And that's not even including the joint account withdrawals you never told me about, or the college fund Uncle Mark confirmed you drained years ago." Her head snapped up. "Who told you that?" "Doesn't matter," I said, my voice unwavering. "What matters is you knew that money was meant for me and you used it anyway." My stepdad slammed his hand on the table. "Enough! You think you can waltz in here with your spreadsheets and lecture us like we're children? Families help each other. That's what we do." "Exactly," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Families help each other, not bleed one person dry until he has nothing left." I was willing to help. I was happy to help until you decided I didn't get a say in how or when. Lauren crossed her arms, still defiant. "You're blowing this out of proportion. So, you covered a few bills." I cut her off with a laugh, but it wasn't bitter this time. It was almost incredulous. "A few bills?" "Lauren, you and Josh have been living a lifestyle you couldn't afford for years because you knew I'd catch you before you hit the ground. How's that kitchen renovation coming, by the way?" "Oh, that's right. You had to cancel it because I stopped funding it." Her face went red, but she didn't say anything. Then I leaned back in my chair and dropped the real bomb. "I want every shared account removed from my name, every subscription, every emergency card. You have 30 days. After that, I will have... My attorney sends cease and desist letters to anyone still using my information. And if there's another unauthorized withdrawal from my accounts, I will press charges. No more second chances. The room went dead silent. Josh cleared his throat nervously. Patrick, maybe we can work something out. This doesn't have to get ugly. I looked at him evenly. It's already ugly. This is me keeping it from getting worse. Mom started crying then. Real tears, not the performative guilt trips from before. We just didn't want you to feel left out, she sobbed. You've always been so independent. We thought this was a way to keep you connected to us. I swallowed hard. For a second, I almost let myself feel sorry for her. But then I remembered the empty account, the drained college fund, the years of silence when I needed help. This wasn't connection, I said gently. This was control. I stood up, tucked the empty folder under my arm, and looked around the table. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because I deserve a life that isn't built around cleaning up everyone else's mess. Then I smiled, calm, even polite. Dinner smells great, by the way, but I won't be staying. I turned and walked out, leaving them all sitting there in stunned silence. On the way home, my phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from Mom, texts from Lauren, even a voicemail from Ryan that just said, "Wow, dude, you really think you're better than us?" I didn't answer. Instead, I poured myself a drink, sat on my balcony, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. But even as I sat there watching the sun go down, I knew this wasn't over. Because when you take away someone's favorite crutch, they don't just stumble. They panic. And I had a feeling my family was about to panic in a very big, very public way, which, if I was being honest, might have been exactly what I wanted. The next few days were eerily quiet. Too quiet. No calls from Mom, no passive-aggressive text from Lauren, not even a snide meme from Ryan. It was like the entire family had gone radio silent at the same time. At first, I thought maybe they were giving me space, which ironically was exactly what I'd been asking for. But by the weekend, I got my answer. I was at the gym when my phone buzzed with a notification from a neighbor. They'd tagged me in a post on the local community Facebook group. It was a blurry picture of my parents' front lawn, stacked with furniture, boxes, even the old recliner my stepdad used to sit in every Sunday. The caption read, "Garage sale on Maple Street. Everything must go." I stared at the screen for a long time before I put two and two together. They were selling things off to make ends meet, and they hadn't called me. I'd like to say I felt nothing, that I just shrugged and went back to my workout. But the truth is, a wave of complicated feelings hit me all at once. Anger, sadness, even a weird kind of relief. They were finally feeling what it was like to face the consequences of their own choices. Still, I didn't interfere. I let the garage sale happen. I let the calls from their creditors roll in and go unanswered. I let them handle everything the way they'd expected me to handle it for years. And then 2 weeks later, I got the inevitable call. It was Mom. Her voice was small, almost childlike. "Patrick, we lost the house." I closed my eyes, letting that sink in. "We couldn't keep up with the payments without your help," she continued, her voice breaking. "Your stepdad's business is barely hanging on. Lauren and Josh had to pull the kids from private school. Ryan moved back in with us, but now we don't even have a place for him to stay." For a moment, I almost offered to help. The old reflex was still there. Deep down, the part of me that wanted to fix everything, make it right, save everyone from themselves. But then I remembered sitting at my kitchen table months ago, staring at that empty account balance. I remembered Mom standing in my doorway saying, "We thought you understood." I remembered Ryan laughing in my face when I paid off his debt. And the guilt, it vanished. "I'm sorry you're going through this," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But this isn't my responsibility anymore." She started crying then, but it wasn't like before. This wasn't the manipulative crying designed to pull me back in. This sounded like someone who was finally, truly out of options. We just We didn't think you'd ever leave us, she said between sobs. I didn't leave you, I said softly. You pushed me away the moment you decided my life wasn't mine anymore. There was a long silence. Then she whispered, I guess I can't argue with that. When we hung up, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel cruel. I felt free. The fallout spread quickly after that. Lauren and Josh moved into a smaller house across town. My stepdad's business folded within a few months, and he had to take a job working for a competitor. Ryan got a job at a warehouse and stopped posting memes entirely. I didn't rub it in. I didn't gloat. I just kept living my life. Work continued to go well. Another raise, another opportunity to lead a project. I started traveling more, doing things I'd put off for years because I'd been too busy bailing everyone else out. Spain turned into Italy. Italy turned into a hiking trip through Norway. And soon, I had a gallery wall of photos documenting a life that finally felt like it belonged to me. Months later, I got an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner. A simple card in the mail that said, "We'd like to start over if you're willing." I sat with it for a while, turning it over in my hands. Then, on Thanksgiving Day, I showed up. Not because I missed them, but because I wanted closure. The house was smaller, humbler. The fancy centerpiece was gone, replaced by a simple bowl of cranberries. Everyone was quieter too, subdued, careful. When I walked in, Mom stood and hugged me. Not a desperate, clinging hug, but a real one. "Thank you for coming," she said. I sat at the table and looked around. Ryan nodded at me. No smirk this time. Lauren gave me a small, almost sheepish smile. No one asked me for money. No one made a joke at my expense. Instead, Mom raised her glass halfway through dinner and said, "We've all learned a lot this year, and we're grateful for another chance to do things right." I didn't say much. I didn't need to. When dinner was over, I stood up, slipped my coat on, and walked to the door. Before I left, I turned back and said, "I'm glad you're starting over. So am I. But understand, things will never go back to the way they were. And that's a good thing." They all nodded quietly. Outside, the air was crisp and cold, the night sky clear. I got in my car, sat there for a moment, and let out a long breath I felt like I'd been holding for years. For the first time in my life, I wasn't angry. I wasn't resentful. I was free, and I wasn't going back. Then I smiled to myself, started the engine, and drove away. Not running this time, but moving forward. So tell me, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to know.